Oh yeah. Hey yo, it's the Russo Show. Hey yo, it's the Russo Show.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Pizza Film School. Joining us this week is the incomparable Emerald Fennell. When you create your mood boards, because I love this, right? This is a great tool of communication. Is that you at a computer? Do you work with someone else to help? Do you have an art director or is it literally just you sitting at a computer, pulling images and things that are important to you?
Totally. Well, it'll start off as a kind of I'll just pull stuff and put it onto a folder on my computer over the course of like a long time. So I'll just collect hundreds and hundreds of images, and they can be from anything. They can be that they're often paintings, that they can be movie stills, but they generally are any kind of image, really. Photos I've taken of stuff or whatever, and then I used to do it in a Word document, and finally my husband was like, for fuck's sake, get a grip. You can't send people like Word documents that you've like shoddily sort of put, cut and paste, which I always thought was very I was always very proud of myself for such a clever way of doing it. But now I do it in a kind of like PowerPoint, I do it in a kind of PowerPoint presentation style thing, and then I'll save it as a PDF, and it's slightly better. There was an amazing girl who worked on Promising Young Woman who, when I had to go into focus to like pitch, Alyssa she was like, can I just take it and just maybe like just do a little tweaking? And I was like, yeah, of course. And she just made it look so incredible that I was so ashamed that I had been giving people these things. So when it comes to it, I will probably ask someone in the production to make it a bit nicer, but I'm still sending out the same like shitty PDFs to people.
It does the trick.
I mean, yeah, it kind of does. And I like doing it on my own. I sort of feel like, I don't know, it's therapeutic, and it organizes your mind quite easily.
Yeah, it's the process of directing, basically. I mean, it's you thinking through, and because Anthony and I always say that directing is just making thousands of decisions over a prescribed period of time, right? So from the time you start prep to till the movie's distributed, you're just making thousands of decisions. And there's a level of decisiveness that's required because it is typically a compressed time frame, and there's an ability to communicate is critical, and the level at which you communicate is critical. It really is a part of the art form is communication, and so that's why I love this, that you spend so much time and that you actually craft the mood boards yourself, because it for younger filmmakers out there, that's the process of decision making and inspiration that you need to go through in order to execute a movie, which is like a mini military operation,
Well, and also you can just do it on a Word document. You can just do it. Like, honestly, I think the idea that there are all these kind of tricksy apps and websites and usually things that you have to subscribe to and all of that kind of stuff, but you really don't have to. You just, and I think often as well, you'll find that there are brilliant websites where people have like curated things for you for kind of move from movies and stuff. But actually I find that just looking in kind of at more like maybe obtuse things is more interesting than kind of looking at things that people have already done. There are brilliant websites that are like, this is how you use this kind of lighting, and then they'll give you examples, and that's amazing. But actually, it was just as useful for me with my Promising Young Woman mood boards to go to like Sweet Valley High, and find those episodes that I was thinking of, or find some kind of weird sort of Just 17 magazine shoot that had the exact kind of like hideous interior decor for a girl's bedroom. The thing that I feel like I, as a first-time director, needed was just to be like, a lot of this stuff maybe is some people might think of it as lowbrow, or as kind of silly or girly or whatever. But I don't know, it's sort of like having the confidence that if that's what you want to do, not trying to make something that feels like an epic movie. just like coming in and being like, I think this scene should look like something from an episode of Baywatch, where they did a very dodgy storyline about date rape or whatever, whatever it is, like looking at those things that we, I don't know, have grown up on.
Do you feel like you're, and I don't want to use a highbrow term here, but you're an intertextualist? I mean, I feel like most of the important artists today are intertextualists, and it has something to do with how small the world has become and the fact that we're constantly in the dialogue with each other about our own lives and about pop culture and about, we examine everything that happens, and it's sort of this, nonstop conversation on social media. Do you feel like intertextualism is really important to you and as a way to connect people, but also reference? And you don't care about your references. Like you said, they could be highbrow, lowbrow. They could be this, crazy thing you saw when you were 12 years old that you love, and Shakespeare when you were studying him at Oxford, and you smashed them together into your own art.
That's totally true. And also, if you're making a movie on a small budget, as we were, you kind of need to use everything in your arsenal to communicate stuff as briefly and as cleverly and concisely as you can. So, for us with casting, for example, it was about casting the kind of guys that were like crushable. And that sort of thing, there's a world where there are so many talented actors who could have been in this movie. And I think that the kind of people that you might go for traditionally is sort of more like nefarious character actors. But using these comedy geniuses and who are like really handsome and like adorable and who the audience has a relationship with, which is very sort of like intimate and loving, and then taking that and sort of skewering it. It's insane to me to kind of expect the audience to live outside of pop culture. It doesn't. Of course we have a feeling about Adam Brody. For women of my age, Seth Cohen from the OC was their first love. And so, of course that has a bearing on what you're expecting from that character. And then someone like Carey Mulligan is such a kind of famous, I suppose, serious actress. To see her playing this part, again, you're just, if you're giving the audience these signals, it doesn't have to cost money, I suppose. What I'm saying is like, this is a roundabout way of saying like the nails, Cassie's nails was such an important thing for me because it doesn't cost any more than just not giving someone French manicure or whatever. But what it said was, I'm safe. Those nails just say, I'm an idiot. Don't worry about me. I'm not gonna like rip your throat out with these nails. So it's kind of like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so aware that I'm just talking in a sort of labyrinth of madness.
It's all good. Please just go.
Well, I don't even remember what the question was, but the answer is it doesn't need to cost money. It just costs a lot of time thinking obsessively about every single tiny thing, because every single prop and every single color and every single hair tie and every single t-shirt tells the audience so much that the idea to me of just like being like, yeah, whatever, he's wearing a t-shirt, it's like insane.
Look at what you're saying now makes me think of, go back to something you said earlier. You were talking about working with directors when you were an actor who were, couldn't articulate exactly what they had in their head and the difficulty of that. What other things, when you were primarily working as an actor, did you either like or dislike in your process of working with directors?
I'm very, I suppose, no nonsense. My worst thing was feeling like I was being managed, which I think you get a lot as an actor. And also you get a lot, particularly as an actress, I'd say. The sense that there's a conversation happening over there. By the time it's brought to you, it's been kind of presented in a kind of sweet package for you. Whereas for me, I'm just like, just tell me quickly what it is. And I feel the same way, kind of in a funny way, as a director. I feel like the main job of a director for actors is to create an atmosphere where they feel completely safe. Where if they fuck up their line or whatever, there's always another take, there's always time to play around. But if it's not working, I'm going to be quite straightforward and specific about rather than kind of mollycoddling anyone. Things I liked as a director, as an actress, was just not feeling terrified. Like there are so many sets that run on adrenaline and terror, and you guys work in Hollywood, you must know of these places, these things. And look, everyone gets a bit frustrated every once in a while, and I'm certainly not, you know, perfect in that regard, but the idea of like scaring people, the idea of grinding them down to get something that you think is going to be better, I don't know. I don't think it's true. I've never seen an actor get better under those circumstances. And what's really interesting about those kinds of directors is when they come across, when they're working with a really high status actor, they don't do it. Right. Because they know it's bogus, basically.
You're bringing up an interesting point. You talked about this in an interview about a no assholes policy. We have a no assholes policy, and you know, we came into the business through Soderbergh and Clooney, who were mentors for us, and it's how we got in. We grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a million miles away from Hollywood, and we really didn't have an access point. And you know, frankly, we'd still be in Cleveland if you know Steven didn't walk into a theater, you know, 25 years ago and go, I like this crazy movie. You know, talk a little bit about that, the no assholes policy, and why it's so critical.
Oh God, well, again, my husband, who's sort of making him sound like he's a sort of cruel taskmaster, but he said, because I'd said that in an interview, and he said, you know who says they have a no assholes policy, Emerald? And I was like, no, and he said, assholes. I was like, oh fuck, that is probably true, that is true.
It's the only one asshole policy.
Yeah, it's a one asshole policy and it's me, and I'm the major asshole. Oh, I don't know. It's so difficult, isn't it? Because now I'm sort of self-conscious about that. I think, with the caveat that everyone can be an asshole on a day.
But it's important for you not to shout at people, right? It's important for you to...
What is important for me is that I don't believe that what we do is magic. I think that what we do is hard work and imagination. And I think it's privilege to do it. So I don't want to hear any nonsense. I don't want, you know, like, don't believe in huge trailers. Don't believe in people, you know, I don't believe in actors kind of like holding everything up because they need to have an emotional breakdown, which is kind of usually a cover for just feeling insecure and anxious about something, and it's being directed at somebody else, usually a member of the crew. Like, I don't know. I'm a bit like, I feel like a sort of quite strict and hopefully beloved headmistress. We're all lucky. This is fun. This is so fun. So, yeah, so I just do not have time for lots of, I don't know, talking people down or mollycoddling or, which makes it sound like I'm an absolute monster. I don't think I am. I just have a real aversion to anything, particularly actorly. And when I think of Carey and why I love her so deeply, apart from her immense talent, is that she was her own stand-in on this movie. She never was in her trailer. She had lunch with everyone every day. She knew she was part of a crew. And she saved us 10 minutes on every setup by being there. And on this film, that we would have died. We wouldn't have made our days if we'd lost that time every day. So she is my kind of blueprint for the no assholes policy. So it's not so much about not being an asshole, it's just about being there to work.
And being human and engaging on a human level and being committed and understanding the privilege involved in it. And, you know, committing psychic energy and love to the process and in a way that's contributive. I mean, we feel like we're benevolent guides. We are there to help everybody collectively. And look, we do not subscribe to the auteur theory, clearly, because there's two of us, and it's impossible for us to do that by the very nature of our collaboration. So for us, we just look at the process of making movies as this, you know, a symphony. right? And we're all there playing our instruments, and someone's up there, and we're up there with the stick trying to keep everybody in time. It's a privilege to tell these kinds of stories and to get millions of dollars to do make believe. I want to ask you about casting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to ask, because it's obviously, again, with some of the movies that you're making, with the number of kind of like huge A-list cast, obviously, I don't want you to be indiscreet or anything like that. I just mean, like, managing egos is a huge part, I think, of any director's job, particularly when you're not dealing with a kind of traditional, like, there's the lead, and that, if you've got a movie where everyone is kind of used to being the lead, do you have a process of, like, rehearsal where everyone, like, I don't know, like, how do you manage that?
I think probably in many, many different ways, but just to jump in at a starting point, I think the way we manage it perhaps most and best is simply by orientating ourselves in the way that you were describing. Like, if you're approaching the process without ego, what you're doing is you're setting the tone for how everybody needs to behave. Like, if you're coming to the movie with the attitude that the movie is bigger than all of us, and we're all here to serve the movie, it's hard for people not to fall into that sort of mode, even though it's possible for people not to fall into that mode. But it goes a long way, and I think part of what's helped Joe and I through the years is we've worked with many of the same people over and over again through different projects. And what that helps to develop is like an ecosystem around how everybody treats the movie and how everybody treats one another and how everybody behaves. And I think once you start to develop a community that has that vibe, it becomes harder and harder for people not to be a part of that. That's not helpful when you're a new filmmaker and you don't have a vibe that you have cultivated over many years of collaboration with people, many years of work. It's a little different, but I think for us it's become a little easier just because of the process it's lasted so much longer for us. Like, how did you do, like, again, as a first-time director, how did you find that process on Promising Young Woman?
I think I just learned so much on it about, because I remember so clearly. In fact, I drove past the first parking lot where our first unit base was 2 days ago, and I got a kind of cold, I got the kind of cold, clammy hands around my intestines because and now in hindsight, in retrospect, I think, how did I get out of the car that day and go onto set and be like, yes, I'm the director of this movie, hi, to people who had been working in the movie industry in Hollywood. We were shooting it in LA. Now it seems insane to me that I did do it because it's sort of much more frightening to me somehow now. So I think partly for me it was just like that ignorance is bliss, I suppose. We didn't have the time or the money, I guess, for me to worry about that stuff because we were just so up against it all the time. So that was one thing. And, I think it's just about picking your heads of department so much and casting. Like, if the people that you're working with, if you feel like you trust them and they trust you, it makes it so much easier. And I was very lucky to work with a lot of people who were just incredibly collaborative and who really believed in the movie and believed in the script because they were not doing it for the money, so everyone came on board because they believed in it. And so that gave me an enormous amount of confidence and responsibility because I knew that people were taking a pay cut to do it. So when the movie did do so well, I was so relieved that I hadn't let them down, actually. But in terms of, like, how do you do it? I don't know. I think certainly, perhaps as a first-time director and a female director and a director working in a country that I'd never worked in before, I think certainly now I hope that it wasn't too much, but I certainly felt there were times where I was a little extra defensive just because I was so, I was so cautious about keeping the reins myself. And I'd seen so many times, younger directors or female directors get like railroaded by their HDs. So I think I was, not that mine ever did do that. But because I'd seen it happen before, I was very, I was white knuckling those reins really tight. And I think for my next go around, part of it will be much more enjoyable for me, just letting those a little bit looser so that people can play a bit more. I mean, partly for this, it was like, I had to be on top of everything because we just never had any time. We never had enough time, to shoot that movie the way we wanted to shoot it was almost impossible. So it's a weird one. So much of it's subconscious, isn't it? You kind of just do it, and you don't really know what kind of a director you're going to be until you're there, and you hope that you're a good one. you're okay at it.
Oh.
Joe, did you have any other thoughts?
I mean, I could talk to you for hours about this, but I know you're jet lagged. I'm gonna. There's two areas I just want to touch on before we let you go, and one is because it's so brilliant is your casting. Talk a little bit about the process of casting, because you were an actor, and as was I, and I've heard you talk about the fact that you hate auditions, as do I, and I don't think that you get a tremendous amount of value out of an audition. Someone could be nervous. We don't know what's going on in their life. Usually assessing someone's previous work and then meeting them in person and getting a sense of who they are and what their technique is like is probably a better, more accurate way to cast someone in a part. But you also are playing with our perception. This is what I was talking about intertextual before. Our the cast of this film. And I say that like Bo Burnham is a national treasure. He's a very thoughtful, insightful artist who holds a certain position in Gen Z. And the way that you cast him in this film and the character that he plays, it had an even more profound impact on me because it was Bo than if it were someone else.
I mean, I'm with you. I in terms of the casting, it was that we did meetings. We didn't do any auditions at all. We just did meetings, and then at the end did a chemistry read with Carey and the Ryans. So many amazing people, just really lucky. But Bo, as you say, the thing about Bo is that he and Carey are geniuses, complete, I think. And they're geniuses in very, very different ways. And their process is not dissimilar because they're both there to have a fun time. They're not either of them very serious when it comes to this stuff. But it was fascinating because when Bo came in to read with Carey, neither of them knew what the other one was doing. There was that, and it felt like that, that is what you really, really want from a chemistry read. It's not like this immediate intimacy, but something more interesting, which is more like, that's new. This is a new thing. You're a new person. Watching them play those scenes together was so thrilling because they were both very impressed by each other, but they weren't doing the same thing at all. Yeah, and Bo is like everyone in the movie. Part of it was about, and this would make Bo completely mortified and furious, but it's about casting the person that you would conceivably fall in love with. And as you say, Bo is, I would say, not only beloved as a genius, but he is an object of enormous lust and love in the world, even though he would despise that as a concept. So it had to be somebody that you believed Cassie would be willing to give up this kind of quest for. And it would be somebody that we would all really believe is good. And that's the great thing about Bo as an artist and as a person, is that he does think very deeply about this stuff. He is an extraordinary feminist and all of these sorts of things. So yeah, it's so disappointing That's what it needed to feel like. It needed to feel as disappointing for us as it is for her. Because that is, you know, again, it's what it feels like. Because this movie is talking about people that you love and respect doing shitty things, because we're all profoundly shitty people. And as we move through our lives, we have to kind of contend with that and what that means. And so much about the movie is, you know, not necessarily about the shitty act, it's about the denial of it. And, you know, that was the thing with casting someone like Bo, is that when we get to the scene where she challenges him, I was just like, this is the conversation that me and Bo were having. It was sort of like, I was like, the thing is that this is, you are nice because you've never not had to be, because everything has gone your way. But now you're going to come up against some resistance, and I want to see who you really are, which is a spoilt little boy who will just do anything to get to wriggle off the hook. Because that, I think, is the truth of the character, but also of all of us, really, you know, to different degrees in different ways. And so, yeah, in terms of casting, getting Carey and Bo as that central couple, and having sort of a believable romantic comedy was the heart of this movie. Because if we didn't believe him or them, it kind of there would have been no stakes, you know, I guess.
I'm going to ask you about a smaller scene, just as like a little examination. Joe and I are really fond of Alfred Molina. We had the privilege of working with him.
Of course.
And that
so
scene,
wonderful.
yeah, he's an amazing actor in person. The scene where she goes to visit him.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just curious. You know, it's a very powerful scene, and the way you staged it, it's a very simple scene. It's two people talking to each other, but there's a very powerful movement within the scene. And is that something that you had preconceived? Did you work it out with the actors? I mean, just the way that Alfred approached her and touched her was very surprising.
Oh God, he's so wonderful. And him and Carey were so wonderful together as well. So that was one of the scenes where we didn't have any rehearsal time at all. But that was a scene, because I knew exactly how I wanted to shoot it, because it's the most, I suppose, metaphorical of definitely for me, the movie was always a sort of an allegory, really, or sort of like parable. And that it always needed, the kind of forgiveness scene needed to have this kind of like biblical simplicity, and this kind of, what I knew that I wanted was, again, I brought in sort of like Tracy Flick from Election, like eagerly brought in the picture of the Pieta, Michelangelo's Pieta, which is Mary holding Jesus. God, I hope that's right. And some history of art person isn't going to be like, that's not. But it's her cradling Jesus, and it's an incredibly beautiful, moving image. And so I said to the guys, I was like, this is where we need to get to. This is where we're going to, so let's work this out. And what was really, and again, something that I think as a director is one of the like most important jobs, is to always remember what the audience knows. That sounds so facile, but like so much of the time you're so in it, you forget that, like, for example, what I was always trying to remind them of is like, this guy's clearly lost his mind. You're alone in his house. Alfred is huge, you know, he's a big, tall guy. You don't know what's gonna happen. Like, if he gets up, if he's coming towards you, you, Cassie, Carey/Cassie don't know, but we as an audience don't know. We don't know how this is going to go down, because what we've not seen deliberately in this movie is what happens when things go wrong. I mean, it's implied that it happens. Of course it happens. Like, of course it does. But like, it needed to be frightening. And then, of course, you find out that actually it's frightening for him, not her. And so we just kind of had to rehearse it so that it felt comfortable for him, that he would make that movement towards her, and uncomfortable for her. You know, Carey said definitely that when she saw the picture of the Pieta, she was like, fuck this, because she doesn't like to work like that. You know, she wants to get there herself. But she said that she might not have been able to grant that forgiveness if he hadn't been there at her knees, because it was such an act of desperation, and the kind of proximity and the disgust made it possible. So yes, sorry, another extremely long answer.
Can I ask you about music?
Yes.
Because music seems really important to you during the creative process, and it's really important in the movie. And there's a certain tone and style to the music. Would you just tell us a little bit about, do you collect playlists? Is this music from your own personal collection? Where you're living in the story for years, are you also collecting music along the way? Did you have a promising young woman playlist that you had collected over time?
Absolutely. I have a playlist for everything that I work on. And it generally doesn't change. There'll be a point where it's kind of fixed because part of it is that it's sort of part of the fabric of the world. And I think they say in screenwriting school, don't put songs in. But like, if Paris Hilton Stars Are Blind is going to play an incredibly important role in a movie, you got to say, because it's a very specific choice. And so I did put a lot of references in my script, and I think all of them made it into the movie. So, it opens with Charlie XCX's Boys, which is not only just a banger, but I thought I Was Busy Thinking About Boys was just like the perfect lyric in terms of sort of, I suppose, what I was thinking about and what Cassie is thinking about. And then, Something Wonderful from The King and I over the burning scene was very important, because again, it's like looking at those songs. Firstly, just what a song, what an emotional kind of, what an emotionally manipulative cue. That's what I kind of think. It's good to be sort of operatic in those ways and not to be subtle. I think subtlety is quite an overrated filmmaking tool. But Something Wonderful, again, is about a man who's horrible, abusive, monstrous, but then he does something wonderful. So it was just so much about looking at all that stuff and taking artists like Britney Spears and Paris Hilton, who have been through all the stuff in the movie that the movie talks about, and who, only recently have been kind of taken seriously or believed. So yeah, again, it's a kind of hodgepodge of different things. The perfect music cue can say so much.
Your process, as you've been describing it, living in your imagination as a child, doing your own writing, working as an actor, you had a lot of experience with sort of the creative process of filmmaking, sort of in preparation and on set. What was it like for you to have in post-production? I'm curious about, because it seems to be that's the part of the process that you had the least experience with.
I mean, I found it hard. I really did. Fred, my editor, who was just completely wonderful, and Emily, who was also working on it, they were brilliant. I was like, when you see dogs that don't want to be taken around the block and they're just like dragging their feet. There were moments where it was like that for me, because I am so impatient, and so I just want it to be done. And also, I was so proud of everyone, and I loved the film so much that the first cut, which was like 4 hours long, I was like, well, this is a masterpiece, we're done. And Fred and Emily were like, no. I was like, nah, it's done. And then, 6 months later, we finally finished it, and I was just like, kind of, my eyes were bleeding. But I loved it because I loved them, and they were so brilliant. I suppose, yes, it is the area where I'm least comfortable, and I do love parts of it. If I wasn't such a micromanager, I don't know how you guys do it, but I was in there every day, all day, every day, obsessively. I suppose if I could have given them some space and come back to it, I would have been less insane, but it did. Also, I just had a baby. Like, I basically went into labor in the edit suite. So like, and was like, I'm fine, let's just finish this bit. And then I came back after 3 weeks, having had a baby. So I don't even know, like, next time, hopefully it won't be quite so.
Yeah, it'll be, if you're not pregnant, it'll be different.
Pregnant / with a young baby, honestly. But I think I will always look at, and maybe this is just like awful, supreme, arrogant monstrosity on my part, but I don't see a world where I'll ever look at the first cut of a film and not think it's a masterpiece. Not because I think I'm a genius, but because I think that everyone who makes something, once you actually have it in the shape of a movie, it's just so moving. It's so incredible that it's possible, that I don't know how I couldn't be delighted and proud that it exists. And then, you know, like, call me next year when I'm like, it's terrible. But I don't know, I just, I was maybe too proud of everyone.
Well, how did your collaborators convince you that you needed to do that work?
Oh no, I mean, of course they were like, you're an idiot. No, I mean, I was mostly kidding when I said, well, this is perfect, it's 4 hours long, and we've kept in half an hour of Jennifer Coolidge's perfect improvisation and all that kind of stuff.
You have to do a lot of inventory at that place. You should speak to the manager.
Yeah, well.
No, of course I knew it needed. It's just that kind of the obsessive, the kind of shaving off of half quarter seconds that is so important to making a movie kind of perfect is not something that I'm naturally geared towards doing, I think.
When did you come to sort of recognize the value of that, of what you're describing, like as you were doing it or after the fact, or?
I think I always knew the value of it, but that didn't mean that I wasn't a little bitch. Like, saying, I'm going to just go and get a donut. Of course, and also they were like, please go and get a donut. Just go away.
I mean, that's certainly been our arc. Like early in our career, yes, we were in the edit room every waking second. But as we've developed more of a working relationship with certain people over time, you know, there's long stretches where we're not present for.
Do you do the first, I mean, again, the movies that you make are so big, I don't know how it works necessarily, but like, would you guys go in for the first pass, or do you let the editor do it and then you go in and watch it?
We like the editor to have a very thorough editor's pass before we watch it, because we think, again, it's like respecting all your collaborators in the process. We like the editor to really put forward to us sort of something that they feel like they've had the time and space to sort of feel out on their own, and present something that they feel good about rather than undercooked. And of course, all this is always affected by budget and other issues.
Anthony and I always talk about that old adage of you make the movie 3 times, you write it, you direct it, you edit it. And in a lot of ways, we like being surprised. We found that it's entertaining to go in after they've had 2 or 3 weeks to assemble it and sit there and go, oh, you threw that scene out, interesting. Maybe we don't need that. But we're also very hands-on while we're directing, and this is again just from, you know, lots of miles on the tires. We're looking at cuts constantly while we're shooting, because before we leave a set, we may go, we can get that close up better. Oh, we should have got a better line to end the scene, and so we're refining and reshooting as we go. So it's a very it's an organic process, but it's one that we're, you know, when we're directing, it's 24/7, and then we just like to relax when we're done and go, okay, we feel like we try to address everything possible during shooting. We always try to reserve some amount of the budget for reshoots, because we're big fans of the prototype wasn't meant to fly, you know, and you're always going to sit in the room and go, oh shit, now that, you know, I'm not exhausted and I've had a couple of weeks of perspective on it, I bet that, you know, there's 3 things that we could do better. And so that's become a huge part of our process, is refining and reshooting and giving ourselves a couple of months of perspective on that to go back and then, attempt to refine it. Well, we're going to wrap up with something we call small bites, which are just quick questions with quick answers. And they're just supposed to be fun.
Amazing. Oh, good luck. Good luck to you.
If you could give any piece of advice to yourself in your early career, what would that be?
Write more writing.
Great.
If you could watch or read any piece of content for the first time again, what would that be?
I'm going to be such a wanker and say Milton's Paradise Lost.
What do you think is the most important quality of being a film director?
The most important quality? Yeah. Being sexy.
If you could work with anyone, dead or alive, who would that be?
I mean, supremely problematic as a man, but undisputed genius, Hitchcock.
Oh, interesting. I was going to say, well, who's your favorite director of all time? Would he?
I would say Stanley Kubrick, but I wouldn't want to work with him because he was so mean.
If you could shoot in any location in the world, where would it be?
Outside Vegas, there is a sort of Cold War bunker, which is tricked out like a little Barbie house. And it's got fake painted garden and sky and everything, but it's underground. I'm obsessed with it. I'd love to shoot something there.
Emerald, we want to thank you so much for being so gracious and giving us your time today. The answers were incredible. I'm fascinated. I loved hearing everything you had to say, and we adore your work. Like I said, this movie had a really profound impact on me and my daughter, and as I said, I'm grateful for that. So looking forward to all of the amazing stories that you're going to tell for many years to come. So thank you again.
Yeah, we're very excited to someday learn what you're doing next.
Me too.
Manja bene, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Hey, Neil. Yeah. I said I need to go home.
Oh yeah.